Okay, well, hello everybody. My name is Deborah Livingston. I am the CEO and owner of Reemployability, and I have an incredible panel with me today of ladies in our industry, starting with Yashika Williams with Heraclides and Gelman, Sharon Evans with Big Lots, and Nikita Timberland with Summit. And I'm going to let them do the honors of introducing themselves this morning, just a brief something about who they are, and maybe a little interesting or fun fact from you. So I'll start with you, Nikita.
Hi, I'm Nikita Timberland with Summit Consulting. I'm the Back to Work liaison and coordinator here. I've been with Summit for 17 years, and prior to my role as Back to Work coordinator, I was an adjuster. I'm so well versed in the claims aspect and also the return to work processes. Um, a fun fact about myself: back in 1989, me and childhood friends tried out for Star Search. We were the Pink Elite, dancing team. So, and my dancing skills are not the same anymore, but back then, that's a fun fact about myself.
That's very fun, actually. I'm not sure anybody else could live up to that, but let's see. How about you, Yashika?
Good morning. I am Yashika Williams. I am board certified in workers' compensation. I've been a workers' compensation defense attorney for about 16 and a half years. I've been practicing law for 18 years. A fun fact about me, and I'm a partner at Heraclides Gelman. A fun fact about me is that I learned Japanese in high school. So I took 2 years of Japanese. I learned to read, write, and speak it. And at this point, I can only say a few words.
That's pretty cool, though. I mean, that you actually learned it. I think that would be a pretty difficult one to learn. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. And what is hello again in Japanese? Do you remember that?
Konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa. Okay. Yeah. So hello to everybody there. Yeah, out there in the universe. It's so strange not seeing people. So, and Sharon, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sharon Evans. I'm the Workers' Compensation Manager for Big Lots. I've been with Big Lots for 29 years. And a fun fact for me is that I am proof that a house divided can stand. I have 2 sons. I have a football family. We are all college football fans. So we moved to Columbus from Michigan. And we were all Michigan fans. And so my youngest son, he has reverted to become a Ohio State Buckeye. I don't know how that happened. My oldest son is a Michigan fan, along with my husband, and I am a Alabama fan. So we have a lot of fun and still a lot of camaraderie, and we still love each other. So it makes up a lot of interesting conversations around the dinner table.
I bet. And I'm sure there's a lot of strong opinions out there from everybody who's into college football. Absolutely. I personally am an FSU fan. I'm not thrilled with how they're performing this year.
Oh, yeah.
You can't have it every year, right? Yep. So it is what it is.
Don't know.
Well, and I'm Deborah Livingston, and I'm the CEO of Reemployability. I'm the owner, actually. A lot of people don't realize that I own the company, and I started it, I think it's going on 17 years now, which is incredibly hard to believe. A little fun fact about me. A lot of people don't know this because my last name is Livingston, but my maiden name is Orecchio. And so I am 100% Italian American and absolutely love to cook and eat. So,
wow.
That's a good thing. Those are my passions, which can be a blessing.
You probably have a lot of good recipes.
Kindred spirit.
I will say that my grandmother has handed me down some incredible recipes. So, yeah, I love to cook them. And one of the things that warms my heart is my daughter now, who's in college, when she calls me and says, "Can you make that certain thing for me?" When she comes home for the weekend, I'm like, oh, yes, I would love to cook for you.
I love it.
So anyway, let's get down to it. This is about return to work today. And I would just love to have, since I have 3 different perspectives here, what are your perspectives on maybe the top 3 best practices for a return to work program?
I'll start.
And let's start with Nikita.
I'll start. I like to focus on the 3 C's, what I call it, of the best practices as far as return to work. And that's with communication, collaboration, and compassion. With communication, we have everyone engaged. That's the employee, the employer, the physician, the adjuster. Everyone has a hand in on getting this recovery and helping the best practices as far as return to work. With collaboration, you have all different views. You have everyone working together to make sure that we come with a great end result. And then with compassion, showing empathy and understanding where that injured worker is coming from, because we can all be in that same position, and understanding this is the best way to get there into that road to recovery is using the return to work status and trying to get them back to being productive and being active post injury.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Sharon, what about you?
Sure. So for me, it's going to be employee focused, and it's the first one. And that is creating a program that is centered around the employee, making sure that you are that you have a program where you are reasonably accommodating the employee, getting them back to work, doing what you can to accommodate those restrictions. The second part is communication. And that's communication, and you have a buy-in from all the key stakeholders of the program. That is the employer, the associate, the injured worker, your TPA, and that everyone understands their role, their part, and how the program works. And then third would be to have a good partnership with a good company that can help to facilitate all that, and everybody's working together for the common goal, and that's to help that injured worker to get back to work, and helping them through the process.
Right. So it sounds like from the employer carrier perspective, it's very similar, right?
Yeah.
What we need to do. I don't think that shouldn't be a surprise to our audience out there. We've been talking about return to work in our industry for as long as I've been in it, which is way too long. Way longer than I'd like to care to admit. It was an adjuster and starting in 1990. Whew, that was a long time ago. I don't want to do that math. So, Yashika, what about you? Your perspective from a defense attorney standpoint.
So I love everything that both Sharon and Nikita have said, and I agree 100%. I would also add to educate, because you want to make sure that your employer understands, the benefits of the program, why and how they should use the program if they don't. And also sometimes you have to educate the injured workers attorneys, because they may be a little hesitant about, I don't want to say allowing their client to participate in the program. If you get any pushback, you want to educate them on that's great. They're getting paid full benefits in most return to work programs. They're allowed to continue to contribute to society. They have that feeling of still being wanted and needed. And educating them on the benefits of having that program, I think, are so valuable to the process working well as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Yashika, I actually recently heard you talking, and you said one of the questions that you've been asked in the past is, how, as a defense attorney, can you advocate for an injured worker? It seems counterintuitive. So tell us your response, because I found your response to be really, really, really informative, actually.
I'm not one of those attorneys who believes that you have to fight everything, right? And so you really do yourself and your client a disservice if you are fighting everything, because first and foremost, you're racking up tons of legal bills. I always look at the work comp system as a self-executing system. It was created, for the employee to secure benefits they're entitled to. They had an accident, they get treatment. They're out of work, they get paid. And so I believe that the best way for me to advocate for the employee is to ensure that my client is doing what they're required to do by law. If the law says they're entitled to, be paid, they don't have a return to work program, they can't get this person accommodated on the job, then the carrier or TPA should pay them. If they need medical treatment, it should be provided. Now, there are instances, of course, where they're not entitled to those benefits for a host of reasons. And in those instances, we fight, but at all times, I'm still able to advocate for my client, because paying benefits timely is advocating for my client, because it's saving them money and it's saving them time. And I found that that's been just a great way to practice.
Right. That's outstanding. Well, so I know that we tend to learn best from both our successes and our failures. So I want to put you guys on the spot for a minute here. Can you share with me a time when you had like an epic fail when it came to return to work, or just a great success, and maybe what you learned from that or how you recovered from it? Who wants to go first?
I can go first. even wearing my adjuster hat, back in adjusting, I mean, you have so many, cases where you have an injured worker. And I know I recall one where there was a language barrier. We were trying to get the injured worker back in, trying to get him placed within his restrictions. We were trying to get him placed with a nonprofit, actually. And there was just many issues as far as trying to get him the direction on where to go. He didn't drive. So that posed an issue at first on what to do. So because we couldn't get him placed, we actually tried to work something in with the employer to have him placed on site to work in the facility. And it actually worked out great to get him there. But the main issue is, and I really don't want to say it was a failure, but the not understanding the need at the time, not knowing that he didn't drive. We were trying to send him out and we were wondering why he didn't show up. But then, we didn't have that key information and really following up with him. So I always learned to just get all the information up front, understand, okay, not only is there a language barrier, he doesn't drive, these are the demographics, maybe we can accommodate something here. It just took longer than expected to get him placed back to the employer and then accommodate him there. But I'm so glad that at the time, Reemployability offered a service to have him placed right there with the employer. And that kept him, gave him a sense of still being with his employer. It gave him a sense of, normalcy of trying to get back into his regular routine. And he was still helping the company as well.
So I think you definitely hit on a couple of things there that I think are so critically important. It's really knowing who your employee is, right? And understanding and understanding what their own barriers are to return to work. And one of the things I always say to our customers is, even though it's work comp, you have to treat them no differently than you would in any other return to work situation. So whether it's a child care issue or a barrier of language or transportation, you have to consider all those factors and the whole human being when it comes to return to work. Absolutely.
That was a good breakdown.
Right. Yeah. If I could chime in,
sure.
one of the things that we've learned, we've been doing this since about 2007, and so one of the things that we've learned is that not only do you have to take a look at the individual, but sometimes you have to take a look at the state. So we're in 48 states. So sometimes you have to take a look at the case individually itself, and you have to take a look at the state and the characteristics of that particular state. So if you have a really difficult case, sometimes you may have to really pair with your defense attorney, and you have to talk it through step by step. Because if you have a really tough state that is really employee friendly, and you're really trying to get this person in an assignment, that they can sabotage the assignment, and no matter how hard you try, it could just really backfire to where you're still going to have to end up paying wages, or it's just not going to be a good fit to even place the person. So sometimes you still have to take a look at the case. If it's a tough case, you have to work with your defense attorney. So that was a lesson learned for us along the way, but you have to really take a look at that. A success story that we had early on was we had an individual that we could not seem to get release. Every time he'd go to the doctor just would not release him. And we early on, we placed him, partnered up with Reemployability, and placed him at an assignment. And he could not believe that he had to go to this assignment and do this job that he didn't want to do. He was able to go to the doctor and convince the doctor that he was fully healed. So we believe in miraculous healings that we have witnessed. And so these people are able to go to their doctors and tell them, look, I'm healed and I can go to work now. Those have been very favorable for us.
Yeah, well, I have to admit that there is a small percentage that does definitely occur, where that does happen. That's sure. But I think you made a really valid point about jurisdictional issues, though, and there are states that have very specific requirements and nuances. And when a case is heavily litigated, it can't be one size fits all. You do have to partner with your defense attorney and talk through the details of that specific case, and how you're going to help that help and encourage that injured worker to participate in return to work, whether that's an offsite or an onsite program. It's no different.
Yep.
So Yashika, what about you?
I will have to say, Nikita shared some really good information about having all the information, right? So we had a case where the employee had a pretty bad lower extremity injury. We set them up with return to work, but we weren't aware at the time initially that he was in a boot.
Oh,
And
wow.
so although the site wanted to place him, but for the boot, we couldn't place him. And so it's so important, as Nikita said, to make sure you have all of the information and the extent of the restrictions. You know, sometimes we're dealing with lag time in getting medical records so that we know exactly the full extent. Okay, we know you have restrictions, but we don't know, maybe, you know, you have some type of hardware or a boot or some type of assistive device that may not be able to be accommodated. And I just feel like that's why it's so important to communicate and collaborate and share all of that information. Luckily, we were able to get the employee back to their own job, accommodated there. So it was able to work out even though he had a boot at the time. And so I think one of the takeaways I would say is just to be very flexible, as we've been today.
Yes.
Going with the flow and not being so rigid and you have to do it, you have to do this, you have to do it this way. Sometimes you have to go back and reassess and make changes and be okay with it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
to that,
go ahead. No, go ahead, Nikita.
That was a key thing, because I think a lot of times when we're dealing with claims and we get something like that, we think of time. So we're in a rush to try to get it set up and do that and not gather all the information right up front, and you miss some key points in the process. So sometimes taking time, making sure that we're thorough with that, that's something that I've had to learn as far as continuing to be consistent so that it doesn't pose an issue going down, because you can get them scheduled, try to get them in, and then next thing you know, you've got to take 2 steps back because you've missed the key points. So I just wanted to add that.
No, that's great. And what I was going to add to that is that, you know, a lot can be uncovered and discovered by talking to the injured worker.
Yes.
So I am curious from a legal standpoint, Yashika, and communicating with the injured worker directly. Is there any reason why we shouldn't be talking to them when they're represented?
No, not really. I mean, you kind of are standing in the shoes, in my opinion, of the carrier. As long as you're saying, this is your job assignment, this is what you need, you know, providing basic information. I will tell you, there are some attorneys who will say, no, all communication must go through my office. And in those instances, we've worked a ton with reemployability. You all have adjusted the communication and communicated directly with opposing counsel, which is so important as well. I will also say, and this isn't about return to work, but sometimes you have instances where a vendor partner is unable to reach an injured worker.
Right.
I always say, if that person is represented, you can always reach the injured worker by contacting them and communicating with their attorney. And so I think it's so important as we collaborate, not only communicating with the employee, but also with their attorney, just so that they're aware along the way of everything that's happening.
Right. So let's talk about when the injured worker doesn't present for an assignment, whether that's, you know, at on-site or in an off-site program such as ours. What is your perspective on that? Should you let them have another chance? Do you suspend benefits right at that point? What is your philosophy, and what do you think is the best practice? So I'll start with Sharon. What would you do in that scenario?
Sure. First of all, what you want to do is, you know, we're talking also about employee advocacy. So you want to investigate and determine what's the reason behind that employee not showing up. So that's the first thing, is to find out what it is. We're not quick to automatically cast judgment. So let's investigate. You know, what is the reason behind it? The other thing is, kind of, again, going back to that communication piece. We make sure that we notify our injured workers that when you are placed at a not-for-profit, that is an extension of Big Lots. So that means that those rules or regulations apply at that not-for-profit as though you are working at one of our stores or our logistic facilities. So that is in writing, and it is communicated throughout the process. So if something happens and you don't show up for work, and it's not justifiable, and if it is a state that we can suspend benefits, then yes, we will suspend. And partial pay, yes, if it's something that we can pursue, yes, we will pursue after we have investigated the cause behind why you haven't shown up, why an injured worker has not fulfilled the assignment.
Okay, thanks. Ladies, Nikita or Yashika, do you have something to add to that?
Well, she hit it right on the dot. You definitely have to investigate first as to why. We can't just assume that they don't want to go. Maybe there's some issues as to why they're hesitant about returning. We try to reassure them that this is to help them get on the road to recovery and to keep them productive as well and staying. And also it's a benefit to them because they're earning more by going back to doing the light duty work than they are receiving the comp benefits. So those are the things that we try to highlight to them to make sure that they know.
Right. Yashika?
I always say treat it like you would a person who has missed a medical appointment.
Right.
Give 2 chances before you send that letter saying, hey, by the way, we've sent you 2 notices about participating in this return to work program. You have not participated. We're going to stop your benefits if you don't show up on this date. And also simultaneously communicating with your attorney about, hey, what's going on? We set this up. They're not going. Do you know, is there an issue that's come up? And so with that whole collaboration, communication piece that, we all believe is so important to the process being successful.
Right. I completely agree. And I think one of you used the term empathy earlier. And just now, I think it was you, Nikita, that said something about return to work hesitancy. I think that all of us right now can really relate to return to work hesitancy in this world of COVID. And I find it really interesting that all the articles you read these days are all about transitioning people back to the workplace. And we've been doing that in work for decades, transitioning people back to work. So I think that we do need to address people's concerns and hesitancies and fears and why is it that they don't want to participate? What are they concerned about? And especially when you're talking about an offsite program, where it's something that's very, very unfamiliar and foreign with them, I think communication needs to be that much greater. So yeah, I think that it's important, very important, to communicate and to give that person a second chance, just like you would if it was your own family member. Really, you'd be concerned. You'd be concerned for them, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the payment of wages, because one of the things we are asked so often with our program specifically is, why do I need to pay wages? Why can't I just continue the work comp benefit? Or isn't it just the same if I continue the work comp benefit? So I would like all 3 of your perspectives on the benefit of wages versus the comp benefit and why you would choose one way or the other. I'm not going to plant the seed on which way I think it should be. Let's take the legal perspective first, Yashika.
So I think that the employer should pay the wages. I think it's easier that way. I think it gives an added incentive to the employee to participate in the program, because you're saying, hey, you're getting full wages here versus getting 64% under workers' compensation. So that's an added benefit for them. For us, it means that there's reduced exposure from an indemnity perspective. Sometimes we'll have an employee that returns to work their own employer, and the employer says, oh, you don't have to pay anything, they're back to work. And then they delay in sending the wages sometimes. And so you have a person who's back to work, you have a pending petition for lost wages, and you find out at mediation that, oh yeah, they've gone back to work, but they're working, 24 hours instead of 36 hours. Right. So now you have exposure that you didn't know you had because someone believed that them coming back to work was enough for you not to have to pay benefits. And so to me, it's a great way to get the employee in a good environment, allow them to be paid their full wages. I think they're happier when they get their full wages, right? Because who wants to live off 64%? It's hard enough sometimes to live off 100%.
Exactly.
I think that's like my cheerleading point, like full wages, full wages. And so I think it's better that way. And I also think it's better sometimes because sometimes you have like an emotional piece with an employer. Most employers you don't, but sometimes you do, where they feel they take it personal that a person has had an accident, and they feel like it's going to negatively impact the employer, and it really shouldn't. And it gives that space, but allows that employee to still feel wanted, what you want them to feel. You don't want them to feel thrown away. And you want them to know, listen, we can't accommodate you here, but we want you to keep contributing because we know that you can. I'm going to have you set up to go at this place and get full wages, which is going to be far better for you. And I'm just trying to figure out, you make it
Right. Right. That's great. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to give my opinion yet. I'll wait till the end. Sharon, I'll let you go. I think you guys all know where I lean.
Yeah, I don't even know what else I have to add to everything that she said. I think on top of that, as an employer, you have to also take a look at how that affects your program. You have to take a look at how paying benefits is going to affect your insurance premiums.
Right.
Because if you're set up to where if you're paying TTD benefits, and if that's going to affect your mod rate, then you don't want to pay TTD. You want to pay the full benefits. So, and you also have to take a look at how your program's set up. So if you're on a mod-based program, you don't want TTD benefits. You want them on full pay. So that's the only thing else that I have to add on top of what Yashika has said. So I would definitely vote for full pay.
Okay. Nikita, do you have anything to add to that?
Yep, paying full wages is the way to go. And it also benefits the employer in the long run, because when it's time for them to renew their policies, their mods, they have a 70% reduction if that claim can remain medical only. And that's by keeping them engaged and working, and also paying their full wages so that there's no comp impact.
Right. So let me ask you ladies a question, and whoever wants to answer. Let's talk about part-time for a minute, because sometimes you as an employer may not have full duty options for an injured worker for whatever reason, whether it's staffing issues or whatnot. Would you consider a part-time option for an injured worker? And would that be of benefit?
I would say most definitely, because part-time wages is better than paying, any part of a TTD wage. So we would rather pay partial any day than TTD. So we'll take it.
And we always recommend that as well, to keep them active and to keep them engaged. Because the longer they're sitting at home, they're malingering, things can start to drag. You keep them in a routine, as well as we've learned just by being home. Once you have a routine, you feel more productive. Yeah. So I think that's a key point for them too.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. Yeah. Yashika, do you have anything to add to that from a defense perspective? I mean, is it
no?
Does it carry as much weight if they're working part-time versus full-time from a standpoint of both recovery and defense?
I think the biggest issue I've ever found with employees is having a employee that's mad, right? If an employee is mad, they feel like they've been wrong, they feel like they've been cast away, then that in and of itself creates a hurdle in your work comp case, because no matter what happens, big or small, it becomes a big issue. And so I always say, if you can bring them back, let them know, communicate with them. Listen, because of your restrictions, we can only accommodate you to work this many hours, but if you're not making at least X amount of dollars, work comp will pay you the balance. It's important for employees to know that we're not throwing them away, that they're still very valuable and important to the company. Sometimes employees, after they've had an accident, don't hear from an employer until after it's time to come back to work. They haven't gotten a car, they haven't gotten a "Hey, how you doing?" email or text, and I would be a little offended. And the first time they hear from the employer after their accident happened 6 months ago or 3 months ago is with return to work letter. They're like, I don't want this. I don't even like you anymore. I think if we start early after the accident happens, from the employer perspective, saying, hey, so sorry you had an injury, get well soon, we're thinking about you.
Right.
A 50-cent car from the dollar store or a $1.50 car from Big Lots, well, hey, that takes care of it, right? It at least lets them know that they're valuable and important. And to me, that's the start of it. And if you start out on a good foot with them, then I think whenever you bring them back, they'll be happy to come back, because they'll know that you value who they are and you value them.
Right.
Right.
And
I completely agree with that. And I think that that communication on the front end, like I think it was you that said education. Somebody had said education. I think it might have been you, Ashika,
yeah.
is educating them about the system. I mean, think about it. We're professionals in the system, and sometimes it's confusing to us. Imagine if you don't know anything about it and you're trying to
Right.
navigate it,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
So yeah.
That's
So
why
I think
those initial conversations are important, because when you communicate that
Yes.
and set the expectation early that, once we get your work status and we know what your restrictions are, we're going to do what we can to get you back into doing some type of work, whether it's modified or an alternative duty.
Mm-hmm.
right.
So
Right.
true.
And I
Communication.
want to encourage our viewers to ask any questions if they've got any. I think there's a way you can type in up a question, and if you ask one, I can ask it to the panel, and they'll give you their response. Yashika, I also wanted to put you on the spot a little bit about with regards to one of the things you and I chatted about with regards to return to work was undocumented workers. And again, we get asked this question all the time about undocumented workers and paying them wages and whether or not it's valid for them to even be in a program like ours or to offer them return to work because they're not documented. And now that, so to speak, cat is out of the bag. Everybody knows now that they're undocumented. How should we counsel our customers about undocumented workers? What's the best practice for that?
That's hard. I'll be honest. That's hard. I will tell you the case law is clear. If you have a person who's undocumented, excuse me, and they have an injury, they're entitled to workers' compensation benefits, whether they're undocumented or not. Some undocumented workers are paying taxes. So be aware that sometimes these undocumented workers, be it because they're using a fake social security number, they are being paid, they're paying taxes. They're not collecting their income tax return, but they are paying taxes. And so it gets very tricky. If you have an injured employee and they're undocumented, I don't know, Deborah, it's so hard.
It's a tough question. Yeah.
It's such a tough question. If they were out of work, you would have to still pay them lost wages, right? So you have an undocumented worker, you've been paying them, they've been paying taxes, so you have payroll, you have wages, and so they're entitled to lost wages. I would say if you can get them into a program, do it. I don't know that they would go,
right,
for fear of going on a job not being documented. I think that'd be a huge hurdle that you would have to climb over. Everybody
so
does.
I guess the bottom line is with that question is to consult with your attorney, your defense attorney, and understand the nuances of your specific case, right? And take it from there. So it's really like if someone asks us that question, that's really the answer we should provide is discuss this with defense first, you know, and see what the best approach is. Because I think the laws would vary
it's going to be so fact
every
specific
state too. Yeah.
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 And that also varies by jurisdiction as well.
It does. So there's not one answer to that question, right? Yeah.
No.
So
that was a hard one, Deborah.
I know, I'm sorry. I had to put you on the spot for that. It's one of those questions that comes up all the time.
Yeah.
You know, for us. And so we always, I don't want to say use the term pushback, but we always just ask the question then, well, what's compelling them to participate in return to work? Have you discussed this with your defense attorney?
Right.
How are you going to pay them? You know, all of those, we ask all of those questions. And sometimes I think our customers are like, why are you asking us so many questions? But we're really trying to help them have the most successful outcome for all parties concerned, actually. So it's definitely something.
I mean, with the program, if they do the return to work program, most employers are paying for that program. I would suggest that, I would think that most people who are participating in the program probably run a pretty tight ship and aren't having a lot of undocumented employees.
Right.
I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn and saying that, but it's not unheard of. I'm sure you've heard of it. Obviously, you've dealt with it, but it's probably on the lower end of the scale.
Yeah, true. So I'm not actually really sure what our time is because we started a little bit late, and I don't know if they just cut us off here, but we'll just keep going until they do.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually was reading an article recently that was written after a return to work session at the National Disability Conference a few weeks ago. And I found it really interesting that at the end of the article, the author said, some things never change. Return to work is really the best way to move the claim along and the best way to get results, right? And so, and now that I've kind of put it out there that I've been in this industry for over 31 years, and we have been talking about return to work in all of that 30 years.
Yeah.
Why do you guys think that we have to keep talking about it? Like, it seems like it should be such a no-brainer, right? So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I'll take anyone.
I wonder if I feel like it's too expensive. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, we don't need that. I think there are certain employers who are committed to doing everything they can, right, to have the best of the best programs. I mean, Big Lots, they work with reemployability. They know the benefit of having an employee continuing to work. I don't know if some employers have necessarily bought into the system. You know what I mean? Like, you know that you need to do certain things, but if you've been able to operate without having done that, you may not necessarily see the benefit.
Yeah. I think that you made a really, really good point, actually, that you think that people think it's too expensive. And
Yeah.
I think they could find out that it's probably more expensive to not do it. And I think both Sharon and Summit, and Nikita could probably speak to the cost of not having a return to work program.
Exactly. And as the time goes by, it's years and years, you have new companies coming in, new businesses. People need to stay educated on this process and learn that internally. You have human resource controllers that change out of companies, and then you have someone new coming in. So they always need to be updated on things, staying engaged and bringing them back, and having a good return to work program.
Can I ask a question, Deborah?
Sure.
Nikita, as the return to work liaison for Summit, do you participate in educating your new employers that come into Summit about the benefits of the program?
Mm-hmm. From the front end, when we write new business, or let's say we get a new policy in place, we are introduced, that we give them information on the Summit Return to Work program, and all of our department information as well. So they will reach out to me, or I will go out on an initial visit to educate them on return to work. If they don't already have one in place, kind of give them some ideas on some transitional duties that they can offer. And then I also let them know about, our programs that we have within the company, and that our affiliations that with like vendors such as reemployability that offer transition to work if they cannot accommodate on the premises. And they're really excited about it and really want to stay engaged.
Yeah. Well, Deborah, that's your answer. I think the answer is from the TPA's perspective, to educate their employers who are coming in.
Yeah. Actually, one of the things that we talk about all the time is how the cost of return to work is actually much less than the cost of all the other things you're going to do to, whether it's to prove fraud or to all those things that you have to do on the back end to try to reduce the value of your claim or the cost of your claim. Return to work, if you do it right, will save you all of that.
Right.
And legal fees. It saves legal fees too.
Which is also an expense. Legal fees, vocational, all of it, right?
Yeah.
So, well, ladies, I'm going to ask you for one final thought if you have one. I'm being asked to wrap up. Any final thoughts? I'll say
solid. I think that everything that all the final takeaway on everything that's been said is that a solid return to work program that focuses on advocacy and communication is definitely the way to go. You can't go wrong. Keep it in your toolbox, pull it out, keep it, add freshness to it all the time, save you money, save you time, save your heartaches. You won't lose.
Perfect.
I agree.
Perfect way to end the session. I thank you guys, ladies, so much for participating today. It's been a pleasure preparing, getting to know you, and this day has been great. And I look forward to seeing all of you in person in the
live and in person. Have a nice day.
Have a great day.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Bye.